Hello students, and welcome back to part 2 of this supply and demand equation explanation. And in this part we're going to cover the remaining questions, which is question 4, question 5 and question 6 of the random examples that I've shared with you on Blackboard. So I want us to start reading question 4. This question says that the demand function for tablecloths are given by the demand quantity is 400 minus 2p and the supply quantity is 7p minus 41. In 4.1 it says determine the market equilibrium. So please remember that for market equilibrium, there are two things that we have to calculate, the quantity and the price. And then in 4.2, it says that a tax of 5 Rand is imposed per tablecloth. What is the new market equilibrium? All right, so let's solve question number 4. So far, so good. Right, so with question 4, we are first seeking in number 4.1 our market equilibrium. So again, please remember, if we talk about our market equilibrium, there are two things to solve. We need a quantity and we need a price. So in 4.1, we need to start with solving it. And how do we do it? We do it by paying attention to the fact that the supply needs to be equal to the demand if we have market equilibrium, right? Market equilibrium is there where those two lines cut each other like a cross. So we're going to set the two equal to each other. If I look at the demand, it was 400 minus 2p. And if I look at the supply, it was given as 7p minus 41. All right, so we need to get all the same types of information to the different sides. So I'm going to take the 400, it's going to stay this side. I'm going to bring over the 41, so it's going to be plus 41. And then I'm going to have 7p remain on the right hand side, but when the 2p comes this side, we're going to have plus 2p. So that gives us 7, 9p, beg your pardon, and this is going to give us 4, 4, 1. Right, we need to divide by the 9 on both sides. And that will solve our price. If I type 441 divided by 9 into my calculator, I get 49. So the price should be 49 Rand. Now we have only solved the P in our market equation. So we've only solved this one. We still need to solve the Q. So, and I always like to use the supply function to solve it. So what was the supply function? It was given in question 4 as 7p. So it was the supply price. Oh, I beg your pardon, this one was given as quantity, the supply quantity. Let's try again. Supply quantity was given to us as 7p minus 41. And thus we're going to say it's 7 times the p we just solved. And the p, the price that we solved was 49 minus 41. And if I type that into my calculator, I get 302. So my final answer for the quantity the supply quantity is then 302. So we need to sell 302 units at a price of 49 Rand each to have market equilibrium in this instance. Right, in 4.2, they now impose tax, right? So there's a 5 Rand tax to be imposed. And what do we know about tax? Well, the two things that are important to remember is that if we have a situation where there's tax, firstly, it's going to affect supply only, not demand. And tax will be minus from the price. So it's going to be the price minus the tax. Because now the portion of the price that the supplier can retain for him or herself will be smaller than before. All right, because the rest, obviously, the tax, which is 5 Rand, is going to be paid over to SARS. So let's explore that. We need to adjust our supply function. So our original supply function said that the quantity is equal to 7p minus 41. Now we need to go and adjust the p with 5 Rand, right? So we're going to say the supply quantity is going to be equal to 7. And now we're going to say price minus the 5 Rand tax minus 41. Right. Now we're going to say 7 times p is going to be 7p. And a plus and a minus will leave us mathematically with a minus. And 7 times 5 is 35. If my math isn't too bad. And then minus 41. So our new supply quantity will be 7p. And if we have 35 minus 41, we're going to have minus 76. So this is going to be our new supply if we have to pay tax. Right, now we need to calculate a new market equilibrium. So that means we need to use the new supply that we've just calculated, and we have to set it equal to the old demand because tax does not affect demand. So that's going to be then 7p minus 76 equals our demand function. I'm just looking back at my papers here to make sure I jot down the right demand function. 400 minus 2p. So this was the original function that was given to us. This one we did not adjust. Right, we're going to move all the things to the same side. So 7p is going to stay on the left-hand side. The 2p is going to come over the rainbow. So it's going to be plus 2p. And I'm going to have the 400 remain on the right-hand side. But the 76 will be brought over to the right-hand side. And the sign will change. So this gives us then a 9p on the left-hand side and 476 on the right-hand side, and we need to divide by 9 on both sides. Right, if we solve it, then p equals 476 divided by 9, calculating that into my calculator. That gives me a p of 52 Rand, and if I round to 2 decimal places, of course in the test it will be stated, it will be 0.89, but on my calculator it's 88888. Right, we've solved our price. We need to solve our quantity. I always like to solve the quantity by using my supply equation or calculation that I did, and in this instance we are calculating the new market equilibrium quantity, so we will need the new supply calculation or the new supply expression that we have, and I believe our new supply was equal to, was it 7p minus what? We just check, minus 76. Right, so then for the quantity to be calculated, we're going to take 7 times the price we just solved, minus 76. So what will the new quantity or supply quantity then be? Q is equal to 52.89 times 7 minus 76. That gives me an answer of quantity. It's 294.23. Of course, we need to round because you cannot sell 23% of a unit. So obviously in the test, it will say you need to round to a whole number because units need to be completed. So the completed units will be 294 that we will have to sell. So for the new market equilibrium, if we impose a tax of 5 Rand, we're going to have a units of 294, and each of them will be sold at a price, equilibrium price of 52 Rand and 89 cents. Right, so this is basically what needs to be done, right? So if we should put it in an order, what to do if you have a tax situation that you need to sort out. The first step is you need to calculate your new supply, and for your new supply you deduct the tax from the price. And then 2, you need to set the new supply and the old demand equal to each other, and then you will be able to solve. This will give you your new market equilibrium. So that's basically the steps. You need to calculate your new supply. How do we do that? We need to say it is the price minus the tax in the supply equation that was given. All right, so that was our answer to the question number 4. I want us to then move on to the question number 5. Let us read together. For question number 5, we have a 5.1 and a 5.2. So for 5.1, it reads that the company is willing to sell 400 units of a product if the price is 5 Rand, and if the price is reduced to 4 Rand, 200 units are brought. Find an equation for supply, and it is assumed that the price and the units are linear. For 5 marks. All right, so let's attempt that. Now we need to estimate an equation. How do we do that? There's 2 steps to estimate an equation. We first need our slope called m, and then we need to replace it into the equation formulation. Right, so question number 5. Let's do that one. Right, question 5. I am on 5.1, and the first step is we need a gradient, a slope, right? How do we get to a slope? Well, we need a Q1, a P1, a Q2, a P2. So I'm going to start with that information. The first quantity I see is 400 units, and in that instance, the price is 5 Rand. In the second instance, the number of quantity I see is 200 units, and in that instance, the price was 4 Rand. Now let's do our slope calculation. There's a formula for the slope. It says M is P2 minus P1 over Q2 minus Q1. So if we apply this formula, we're going to say, well, P2 was 4 Rand, P1 was 5 Rand, and we have Q2 was 200 and Q1 was 400, right? That will result in -1. That will give us a slope of -1 over -200. And then, of course, a minus divided by a minus will leave you with a positive answer. So the answer to our slope will be 1 over 200. Right, step 1, finito. Now we need to do step number 2. And in step number 2, we need to fill out our equation. And in this instance, we are calculating a supply. So it's going to be the price of the supply. So let's call it SP because it's the price relating to supply, is MQ minus M times Q1 plus P1. M we know is 1 out of 200Q. Then we have minus. M is 1 over 200. Q1 was, I believe, times. You just check again. I think it was 400 units. Plus P1, I believe that was 5 Rand. Right. If we continue to solve this equation, we're going to say the price is then 1 over 200Q minus 1 out of 200 times 400. If you put that into your calculator, you ought to get 2 plus 5. Then we're going to say it's 1 over 200Q minus 2, because this is now a positive 2, right? And a minus and a plus is a minus 2 plus 5. So our supply equation should then be 1 out of 200Q plus 3. Right, solved. A whole 5 marks, done and dusted in 2 little steps. First, calculating our slope, and then replacing the information in step 2 into our linear equation. Right, great. Let us progress to 5.2 then. Right, for 5.2, I want us to read together. And now they have given us the equations. They say for the supply, the price of the supply is 1/4 Q plus 1. And for the demand price is minus 1 over 5Q plus 10. Then in 5.2.1, we need to find the market equilibrium, and then they have given us this tax again, and we have to recalculate the market equilibrium. So let's look at 5.2, a very nice question. So we are on 5.2.1, and we need to go and determine market equilibrium. So what do we know about market equilibrium by now? We know 2 things about market equilibrium. It is where supply is equal to demand, and market equilibrium needs us to calculate 2 things. We need a quantity as well as a market equilibrium price. So I'm going to start with setting the supply and demand equal to each other. And if I look at the information given, it will be then 1 over 4Q plus 1. And we're going to set it equal to minus 1 over 5Q plus 10. Again, we need to sort out our information and move it over the equation sign. So I'm going to have 1 over 4Q plus 1 over 5Q as this one moves this side. We have a 10 on the right hand side. We will bring over a 1. And the sign of the 1, of course, changes. Then we have the 10 minus 1 is 9. And then 1/4 of a Q plus 1 of a 5th Q. If we add that together, you should get, according to my calculator, 0.45Q. So 1/4 plus 1/5 gives us 0.45Q. And then we need to solve this Q. So we're going to divide by 0.45, 0.45. Just for clarity, how did I get to the 0.45? I took 1 out of 4, so I typed into my calculator 1 over 4 plus 1 over 5, and that gave me 0.45. Right, if I say then the 9 divided by the 0.45, I get 20. So for the market equilibrium Q, we need to sell 20 units. Right, so let's go back and just do our checklist. So we know supply equals demand. We've applied that. We know we need to solve a Q. So now we still need is to solve our P. How do we do that? We replace our equation for supply. So for supply, it was that the price of the supply was given to us as 1/4 Q plus 1. And we just solved the Q for market equilibrium. We said it's 20 units. So I'm going to replace it in 1/4 of 20 plus 1. And 1/4 of 20, I believe, is 5. Plus 1 gives you 6. So the price should be 6 Rand for market equilibrium. All right, and there we have indeed answered then 5.2.1 because we've solved the market equilibrium fully. We've done a calculation for the price and we've done a calculation for the quantity. In 5.2.2, we have a situation where there is tax. Right, so what do we know about tax situations? Well, firstly, it affects our supply. How does it affect supply? We need to say P minus the tax. Then what do we have to do? We need to take the new supply and set it equal to the old demand. And when we do this, we need 2 answers. We need 1 answer for a quantity, 1 answer for a price, so that we can get to a new market equilibrium. Right, so let's first fix our supply now that it needs to be adjusted. So if I look at my old supply, quote unquote old supply, they say that the price of the supply was 1 over 4Q plus 1. So if the tax is 90 cents, I need to deduct it from the price. So I'm going to say the supply price minus 90 cents equals 1 over 4Q plus 1. Now the figures need to move to the other side. So the supply price will now be 1 over 4 of the quantity plus 1 plus 0.9, which is 90 cents. And that gives us then our new supply price, and that is 1 over 4Q plus 1.990. Right, now we have our new supply. Great. did we apply P minus the tax? Yes, we did. Now we need to take our new supply that we've just calculated here, and we need to set it equal to our old demand. All right, so let's do that. So our new supply is 1 over 4 plus 1,9, and it needs to be set equal to the old demand, and the old demand was minus 1 over 5q plus 10. So I'm going to move around the items to the same side, 1 over 4, and then this one is going to come over the rainbow, plus 1 over 5q. This is going to be 10, and we're going to minus 1, 9 or 90. Right, we need to add together 1/4 plus 1/5. I believe it gave us 0,45 on our calculator. So if you type 1/4 plus 1/5 on your calculator, it should give you 0,45. And if we type 10 minus 1.9, I get on my calculator 8,1. We're going to divide by 0,45 on each side. And that is going to leave us then with an answer for Q. Then Q is 8.1 divided by 0,45, and that gives us 18. So the new market equilibrium is 18 units. But we are not yet done. Why not? Because we've now solved, if we go back to our original plan, we have now solved the quantity. We still need the price, right? How do we calculate the market equilibrium price? We need to use our new supply function and fill in the market equilibrium quantity. So what was the new one? It was 1/4 Q plus 1,9. So the new supply is 1/4 Q plus 1,9. We are replacing the Q we just calculated, so it is 1 over 4 times 18 plus 1,9. Right, then 18 times 1/4 gives us 4.5 plus 1.9. And if we add that together, I get 6 Rand 40 as the new supply price. Right, so we've solved the entire problem. We adjusted the supply with the tax. We got to a new supply function. We used that supply function, we set it equal to all demand. We solved the market equilibrium quantity. We took the market equilibrium quantity, we put it into the new supply. And when we did that, we got to the new price. So if there is a tax of 90 cents, the new price should be 6 Rand 40, and the new equilibrium units will be 18 units. Right, and that was our answer to 5, or question number 5. Our last one is a question number 6. So I want you to refer back to the question. And in question number 6, it says, at a certain shop, 4 shirts cost 200 Rand. Another shop owner is willing to sell 7 of the same shirts for 230 Rand. Write a supply price equation for these specific shirts and assume that the relation is linear. All right, so if I look at the overall random questions, what can they ask us? They can ask you for the market equilibrium, and they can ask you for a tax calculation where you adjust your supply, and then a new market equilibrium, and then they can ask you for a straight line equation. So those are the three things that are tested: market equilibrium, new market equilibrium with tax, and then the third one will be your equation. So for the equation, again, we have two steps, right? So we're on question 6 for anyone who has fallen asleep. We're on question 6. We need to get to an equation. So for the equation, or let's just do a recap again. Okay, so what can they ask you in a test relating to supply and demand? They can ask you for market equilibrium. They can ask you for new market equilibrium if you have a tax which affects the supply only, or they can ask you for the equation of a supply linear function or a demand linear function. This is what can be in a test. So we are now here where you have to get to an equation. How do we get to an equation again? There's two steps. The first step is we need to get to a slope. But before we can do that, we need a Q1 and a Q2 and a corresponding P1 and a P2. So for Q1 and P1, I see that it is 4 shirts for 200 Rand. And then I see it is 7 shirts for 230 Rand. That would then be my Q's and P's. And then I need to fill out my formula where the slope is M, and M is P2 minus P1 over Q2 minus Q1. Right, then we're going to say, filling out this equation, it's going to be the P2, the 230 minus 200 over the 7 minus 4. And that will give us a slope of what? I see here it's 30 over 3, and that should give us a slope of 10. So we've solved our first step. M is 10, the slope is 10. Moving along to getting to the second step is where we need to fill out the equation then. And what is the equation? They're asking us for supply. So we're going to say the supply price is equal to MQ minus M times Q1 plus P1. And now it's like building a puzzle. We just need to put the amounts in the right spaces. So for the supply price is going to be M is 10Q minus 10 times, what was Q number 1? I believe it was 4. And what was the price one? I believe it was 200. Now we need to just solve this equation by saying it is 10Q minus 10 times 4 is 40 plus 200. And that is then 10Q minus, this should be positive, right? So a minus and a positive gives us a minus. 40 plus 200. And that will then leave us with 10Q 200 minus 40 is positive 160, which is our supply. Beg your pardon, this should be price, the price of our supply. Let's try again. SP equals 10Q plus 160. Okie dokie. So here we've now done all 6 of the questions. The first 3 are in part 1. The last 3 are covered in this video. I hope that you've enjoyed these explanations, and let me know if you have any questions around supply and demand and linear functions. Keep well until the next lecture.